Hi friends, welcome to Charlie and Steve Watch Stuff, and today we are watching X-Men 97. I'm Steve Selnick, and he just got done complaining about the cost of apples. It's Charlie Peppers. Charlie, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. I am so excited to talk about this damn episode. Y'all have no idea.
This was next level, man. That's all I can... I just watched it again maybe 30 minutes ago, so I'm still like recovering a little bit emotionally for the second time. We just discussed this before we came on and started recording, but I need like emotional resets sometimes when things, especially when things I watch are very heavy. And let's just say I watched this episode again before I was ready to watch it again emotionally. So I'm a little like, oh, okay, let's do this. Let's talk about it. But yeah, we're here to talk about the latest episode in X-Men 97 titled Remember It, released a couple days ago on April 10th, 2024. I'm just going to go ahead and say early contender for best episode of television of the year.
I'm going to yes and you. This felt like the Red Wedding episode of Game of Thrones. It really felt like is that called the Reigns of Casimir?
The Reigns of Castamere.
Castamere,
yeah.
Not me saying cashmere. But
the Reigns of Cashmere is definitely a different song by a different artist, but maybe we'll get that one
We'll
day.
unpack that later. I want to jump ahead just to say why I think that it is like the Red Wedding. It's a small detail, but you wrote it in the notes. We have a very quick blink and you miss it cameo from the Watcher in a moment that I'm not going to describe yet, but the Watcher pops up, and if you're a Marvel head like Steve Selnick and I are Marvel heads, the Watcher watches events that are pretty much world shifting and that are big. He's not watching Jubilee go to the arcade. No, baby. The Watcher is here because he knows that a huge thing is about to pop off, and that's all I'll say until we get back to that moment in our recap. But that's the level that this episode just throws everything on the table. Steve, did you see it coming?
No, not even a little bit. I spent the majority of the second half of the episode with my hands over my mouth, like kind of like simulating breathing into a paper bag.
Oh my God.
Borderline hyperventilating.
It's a lot.
It was a lot. It was a whole lot. So if it's not obvious, spoilers for the rest of the episode happening. We're going to talk about everything that happened. So if you haven't watched this episode yet, please God, do yourself a favor and go back and watch this episode. So let's get into it. Remember It, written by Bo DeMaio. We Are Not Worthy. Directed by Emi Yonemura. The plot of the episode is as Genosha prepares to join the UN, select members of the team head to the island nation to be the honorees. Back at the mansion, a behind-the-scenes press event risks airing the X-Men's dirty laundry. We open with those interviews being done by Trish Tilby. It's a story attached to Genosha becoming a part of the UN. Fun Riddler trophy here is that Trish Tilby is actually a comics character. She appeared a few times in the comics. I think she actually appeared once in X-Men the Animated Series back in the 90s as well. And in their comics history, she dated Beast. And it's partially why Beast starts blushing after her compliment. And I love that the show kind of right away shows the blushes and the little subtle face animation work that they can do now compared to the 90s. I just really
He's
really
not
love.
the only one who blushes this episode. We got a lot of people getting red in the face.
We got a lot of
and
blushes.
We're about to find out why. So I'm excited.
Oh yeah. And so we also get sort of the connecting tissue of, while all of these X-Men are at the mansion getting interviewed by Trish, we have Gambit and Magneto and Rogue. How funny that those three happen to be going to the island all together, heading to Genosha to take part in this big event. Another fun little Riddler trophy, the drums, the Caribbean island drums, the steel drums that you hear in the background as they're playing are actually doing the da-na-na-na-na-na, da-na-na-na-na-na, but in the style of those steel drums. So I think that was a really fun, like, we're still in X-Men, but we're in a different place. We get a ton, just like they're all mutants, just having a regular life, milling about, dancing to music, shopping for food. We get a ton of cameos from mutants. Charlie, I know you wrote a lot of them in here. We get Marrow and Exodus and Dazzler and Boom Boom and Pixie. Who is your favorite from all of these? Just kind of like a quick passing glance of a mutant that maybe you weren't expecting to see or that you were really stoked to see hanging around.
You know, I'm going to say that of all the cameos we had, Marrow. I really like that character. They haven't done a lot with Marrow in the current run of X-Men comics, but Marrow was unintentionally the influence for Spike, aka Evan Daniels, in one of my favorite X-Men cartoons, X-Men Evolution. He can shoot bones from his body like projectile weapons, and Marrow, she is canonically part of the Morlocks. So I hope that we see more of her, but with how this episode ends, I don't know. Yeah. I was really happy to see Marrow because that's when I was really deep into the X-Men comics in the early 2000s, late 90s.
I love it. And Madeline Pryor also there. Turns out they wanted a Jean Grey-like type to help with their council of Genosha, and she happens to be a spare Jean, as she says, which is a good kind of double entendre because she's also technically a split Jean.
Yes, and
from Jean Grey.
And mutant. Dad's here all night. So what I like about that, I think it's like a triple entendre because they could spare an extra gene because there's two genes, an extra gene because she is a clone, but also mutants are the result of having an extra gene in their genetic makeup. So I thought that was just chef's kiss. Can we double click on Madeline for a second because I really like her. I fuck with her. I fuck with Madeline, and you know why I fuck with Madeline? She is handling the news that she is a clone far better than I would. I would assume that she's handling it better than you or anyone we know would. She is, what I like about her is that she's her own character, but what really gets me about this interpretation of Madeline is that she has Jean Grey's compassion in her way of just rolling with the punches and saying, all right, this is happening to me. What am I going to do with my life? How am I going to... And the fact that she so quickly decides that she still wants to help and that she still believes in Charles's dream. Chef's kiss. I think they're doing a lot of work with her character that the comic books blatantly neglected to do with her. She isn't just this homewrecker who just hates Jean and hates God. She's a person. I really like her. I think she's very interesting, and I hope we get to see her grow.
I totally agree with that. Gambit says that 2 is always better than 1 and usually better than 3, but only in some exceptions, which is not X-Men 97 sliding a threesome joke in there for a cartoon that's supposedly about kids. I loved it. I loved it so much, especially coming from Gambit. And all of a sudden we get my other favorite X-Men, fucking Kurt Wagner, Nightcrawler, quite literally jumps onto screen, takes Gambit and Rogue for a tour of the city. He's there acting as a sort of commissioner of the different faiths and working on all of the X-Men's faith-based relationships, I would say. Is sort of like the commissioner of all of that, the chancellor of all of that, if you want to sort of point towards something in the future. And we get sort of like what real life is like on Genosha on the ground. Rogue is really taken by the culture of it all. It's exactly how he described it. Who described it? The professor? We'll get there. And Gambit makes these socioeconomic comments, looking at the apple, commenting on how expensive it is. Nightcrawler goes, Rome wasn't built in a day, essentially. Building its own nation is not without its struggles.
Also, Gambit was a thief, so I think Gambit thinks everything's too expensive.
That's probably true, but he's got that Aladdin in him. He's just trying to help them poor folks out.
Just a little snack, guys.
But I swear he's really tasty. Okay, I love that movie. I love this show too. Anyway, we get essentially Nightcrawler absolutely roasting Gambit for not just like wifing Rogue up, despite the fact that they can't touch each other. And sort of plants this notion of, some things are deeper than skin, bro. Like, I see the way that you're good at poker, but you can't hide your face right now, my friend. I love all the gambling jokes that they do with him. And I called it basically Nightcrawler roasts Gambit for being a sad boy about Rogue. But he plants a seed there. He's a little bit like, yeah, I know you're right. And we'll get to sort of like the culmination of that triangle. But before we do, unless there's anything else you want to say about that specific triangle, we're about to move on to the other triangle where I feel like we're going to have more of an argument, and I can't wait.
Yeah, what I really want to say, I like that this show is doing Nightcrawler justice in just this small appearance. I think that the original show, the X-Men animated series in the 90s, I think we maybe got 1 or 2 episodes of Nightcrawler, and he was just so devoutly Catholic, which good for him, but wasn't the burst of light that he is supposed to be in the comic book. They got one part of him right, but they didn't get the other part of him right. And then on the other side of the coin, X-Men Evolution, he's one of the best characters. He's bubbly, he's bouncing around. He and Rogue have like this fun sibling rivalry going on, so they have a very deep relationship with each other. But then he doesn't have the devout Catholic faith at all. Then you have X2, where he's devoutly Catholic, but he is brainwashed, so he doesn't really have like the boisterous personality, except for a few quips here and there. So I feel that this is yet another example of the writing nailing the characterization in as few as 15 lines, maybe less. So my hat's off to Bo DeMaio again for how this was written, because he managed to just not only understand Nightcrawler, but just have him do what Nightcrawler does best.
Isn't it funny how we've said that multiple times with multiple characters in the 5 episodes that we've covered in this show, I feel like, where they've done more for certain characters in a few lines of dialogue or a few episodes than they maybe did for them in the entire series. One of which we're going to talk about right now, one Jean Grey. We're back at the mansion, back with the interviews. Cyclops is, trying to put on his best face, his best I'm the leader of the X-Men face, but it's awkward. He's having trouble with his glasses setting off a big reflection in the camera. He's getting awkward questions about Jean that he doesn't quite know how to answer, considering we're quite literally on the heels of this clone revelation and the fact that his son got sent to the future and he's gone through all of this trauma without actually processing it. And he gets asked a question about when he knew that he was in love with Jean. And this is when we get at the same time Jean harnessing her psychic powers, looking at her memories through water, and talking to Logan about the same moment, where she was harnessing the power of the Phoenix. And we should talk about this. I think the way that she describes this memory, I'm convinced that this wasn't actually her, that this was Madeline, because she doesn't recall Wolverine being there. And Logan's like, yeah, I was there. And she was like, oh, yeah, right, you were. And this is a very famous comics moment, Jean harnesses the power of the Phoenix. I guess it's a famous X3 moment, but that it goes sideways after that.
X3? What? And that was a movie? That happened?
That I didn't realize that there was
What's
a third.
X3?
The Last Stand?
It should have been.
So,
it should have been. It should have been.
I'm never going to get sick of it.
I'm such a bitch. Keep going. Keep going.
And so they describe this moment where Jean harnesses the power of the Phoenix to prevent Scott's concussive blast from coming through his eyes, so they can actually look into each other's eyes and they kiss, and it's the moment where they realize that they're in love with each other. And Jean is having trouble figuring out if that moment was actually her and what is real, what's not, what is correct out of all of this pain and nonsense. Scott also remembers it as a moment of a big moment for him, but he also at the same time has no idea which person he had that moment with. And Logan, my man, comes up and is like, there's only been one of you, Red. And we get the blush, and we get the kiss. And Charlie, when I tell you that I fucking screamed and almost picked up my phone to text you right away, but then realized it was 7 a.m. and there was a chance you hadn't watched it yet, going, I was right. Now, I said that Logan fumbled the bag here, and you say that he has emotional maturity.
He does.
I feel like an immature asshole, but I don't.
He does have emotional maturity. All right. In the words of Kanye, I'm gonna let you finish. You go first, then I'm gonna go.
No. That's really all I had. I mean, just like, I feel vindication in being correct. I knew it was gonna happen. I knew they were setting up for it. I think you're also right in the sense that she was cloned and replaced before the wedding. So I think that they're opening the door to be like they never got married. So there's like a lot of leeway here to go in whatever direction she wants to go in. And I think it gives her the door to be like, yeah, there's been this dude who fucking loves me here the whole time, and I don't know which memories are my own, so why not go ahead and make my memories with this person who is like clearly here for me. But I know that she also has to like figure her stuff out and get like right with who she is and all this. And they're doing a lot to like show her as more capable as just the person who has crazy powers but then faints after. So I know that there's going to be a lot of like Jean Grey to build. I just loved it. And if we're talking about X-Men being a combination of fucking backflips and one-liners and soap opera, like, we're crushing it. We're crushing it in this episode.
Also, Jean being unsure of her memories gives her a lot more in common with Wolverine. That's like a huge part of his character. I wish a missed opportunity. Well, you know what? Not even a missed opportunity, because he says, I know a lot about past memories. You got to not let them pull you under. You got to rise above it. I think Logan is a great person for her to be around right now, just because he has lived many lives, and now Jean has also lived many lives. So in a way, they're both immortal. You know, I think that Logan has a higher capacity to understand her. I don't think Scott's trying to understand her at all right now. To be fair, he's going through a lot too. I don't think that she's making an effort to say, oh, hey, I'm really bummed that you lost your son. Let's talk about that. Because it's weird for her, because he had a child with a clone of her. So it's just they need counseling. They need couples counseling. They need couples counseling. And I think if things weren't, my advice to them would be to make new memories together. I think my advice to them, if it wasn't chaotic, go on a trip together, get away, have some fun, you know, be in a cabin, just like fuck for a long weekend, see if the connection's there, you know, and just really decide who you are now and who you want to be going forward, because they're doing a version of what couples do that I think is the death of relationships, which is, well, in the past, this happened. Well, what happened there? You know, I think that they're doing a lot of ruminating on things that are outside of their control.
And we'll get to the roadblock that may be the bump in the road of that very good idea that you have for them, Charlie. But first, we have Scott's little breakdown where he gets asked about Nathan. He initially lies about it, which honestly, what are we doing here, Tilly? Like, Tilly, what are we fucking doing here? Why are we asking about this stuff? I guess it's to try and humanize them, which is what her excuse was. Like, I'm trying to show the world that y'all are just like normal
she's
people.
Being
and Scott's like,
she's
we're not.
being nosy. That's what she's doing. I mean,
she's being nosy. I do think a lot of journalists cross this line in the sense of trying to humanize someone, but they're actually trying to sensationalize somebody and get a story out of stuff. Especially with like she clearly already talked to the doctor and had the story of Rogue taking his abilities.
I'm like, ooh, you're just gonna throw Rogue, my girl, who I fucking love Rogue. I can't wait to talk about Rogue, but yeah, she definitely, they were both wrong for different reasons in this. I think Scott overreacted, but I think he was definitely provoked by Tilby, who meant well. She meant well. Yeah, what do you think?
I think he's justified. I was going to read the last thing he says before he walks out. He goes, "The truth is we're nothing like you, and thank God it's the only reason why you're still alive," which is true. It's not untrue. But it's also just, you know, not exactly the thing you want to say to people you're trying to convince that you're not dangerous.
And not on TV.
You know, tough look.
Not on TV.
Not on TV.
Thank God social media isn't
we get
a thing.
A couple more troubling TV moments. Yeah. No cell phones just yet. No one caught that one live in the moment. So I don't even know if it's being was it being broadcasted live? Were they doing it live? I don't think they were.
No, but this footage, I really want this footage to come back to bite him in the ass.
I'm sure it's going to. There's no way it doesn't, and especially the next moment after this that we'll talk about after the Genosha Council
meeting. Let's put a pin in this. Remind me to bring something up about Cyclops at the end of the episode.
So we get the other end of the Genosha crew. Magneto goes off and joins the Council. The Council of Genosha currently stands as Sebastian Stan, Emma Frost, Banshee, Madeline, Callisto, and Human, Moira McTaggart, and they all collectively ask Magneto to become the Chancellor of Genosha, and he agrees on one condition, that Rogue joins him as his queen, and he'll actually tell Rogue later that it's actually he wants her to lead and be the true empathetic leader while he's just the face. You put a Riddler trophy here, which is really cool that Sebastian Stan, Emma Frost, Banshee, Magneto, and Moira McTaggart are all featured in X-Men First Class. They're all very pivotal characters in that movie. We may be talking about some of those X-Men movies soon. Little teaser there for the audience. As we said before, Rogue's fucking pissed. She thinks that Magneto's just making a play for like making her his queen and that they're gonna run away together and be together again. And he's actually like, no, like I don't actually want to do this. I don't think I'm capable of doing this. I actually think that you would be much better at this than me, but they would never ask you. So why don't you come and I'll just be the face, but you're actually like kind of making the meaningful change. And that actually gets through to her a little bit, because I think she really wants that same vision for mutant kind that Magneto does. And Magneto very rightfully thinks that she can get there better than he can.
I think that it's a huge compliment that Magneto thinks she's capable of doing this. And to be fair, this, oh my God, I bring up X-Men Evolution so much on this pod, but I'm going to bring it up again.
Well, it is your fave.
Yeah, I think X-Men 97 is now my fave. I think Evolution is now my second fave version of the X-Men, but I love X-Men Evolution's version of Rogue so damn much. I know that the goth aesthetic is very dated and very 2000s, but what I really love about both versions of Rogue is that she wants to do the right thing, and she's driven to help people despite not being able to touch people. And this version of Rogue has really won me over. People say that Jean Grey is the heart of the X-Men. I wouldn't call her the heart. I would call her more of the soul of the X-Men, and I think that Rogue is definitely the heart of the team. She's so sweet. She's so likable, but she's also a powerhouse, and I think being sweet and being open to people and really caring about them is what makes her such a powerhouse. I would even argue that this version of Rogue is just as capable of leading the X-Men in a way that Cyclops and Storm can't really lead them. I think if we were to have a third field commander in this version of the X-Men, Cyclops, Storm, and Rogue, because I think Rogue can handle shit, and I really believe in everything that Magneto sees in her. What do you think of this version of Rogue?
No, I mean, hey man, my only context is the Rogue from the movies, so yeah, this one's better.
I have a soft spot for that Rogue too. I have a soft spot for her untapped potential in those movies, because I think, again, that movie that we won't talk about, that should have been the last one, really fumbled the bag with her. But the first movie was very interesting, the things they did with her. The second movie... Well,
they centralized her in the first one,
centralized her in the first one. And what I like about the second one is that we see her... You see a little bit of her sass come out a little bit more. Do you see that? Mm-hmm. You know that moment with her and Magneto where they're on the X-Jet and she looks at Magneto and Mystique, and Magneto says, "We love what you've done with your hair." And Rogue just takes off her glove and she's like, "I'm about to kill your ass." And she gets held back. Like, more of that. Like, they did that. They had her land the X-Jet. She took Pyro's power and she extinguished the flames. I think if they would have gone on a similar trajectory with her in the third movie, that it would have been really good. I really hope she shows up in Deadpool 3. Or Deadpool and Wolverine.
That'd be cool. That'd be really cool. I mean, talk about a movie with endless possibilities. Mm-hmm. The MCU killer, as you will. Mm-hmm. So actually, we're going to jump around a little bit. Let's stick with Rogue, and then we'll go back to Scott and Jean, and then we'll go into the big event, because this is a little bit out of order. Technically, we go to Scott and Jean before we go to this moment. But the continuation of that is Rogue going to pay Gambit a visit before the big party ball event to explain to Remy her past with Magneto, which I think also helps really contextualize us for why she is going to be so well suited for this role that she's going to be accepting, where she describes her past and her upbringing and how she was brought to the Savage Land to Magneto to try and hone her powers. And she discovered that he had this love for mutant kind and mutant culture and art and music and fashion and all of this stuff. And they also discovered in that moment that because of his electromagnetic abilities that they could touch, and it turned into other things, as she said. And eventually she saw essentially the darkness within him, the rage, the anger, and realized that there wasn't enough room for both of them in that heart of his. And that's when she chose to leave and become a part of the X-Men, and they've been pretending like it hasn't been a thing ever since. And we get a confirmation that Rogue and Gambit never official.
I knew it.
About it.
I fucking knew it.
You did call that.
I knew it.
You did call that.
Because Rogue is a lot more considerate. Then I knew that the affair wasn't happening in that way of just them being together, it just didn't make sense. And they were rubbing our noses in it so much that I knew that it would have been too easy. But yeah, I told you so.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and they kind of get this official, like, Rogue is going with Magneto. Her screaming, "I can't touch you," was so heartbreaking. Gambit repeats Kurt's line of "some things are deeper than skin." We'll hear that again a little bit later. And he throws the Queen of Hearts into the fire, which is the same card he dropped when he saw Rogue leaving Magneto's room that one time. And they officially are friends moving forward. In my opinion, that was the best scene in the entire series so far.
Yes, because we've had decades of build up to it. And it was just so true. Mm-hmm. And they were both, it really got my heart. Poor Gambit. He's the best. He's really great. And looks so handsome in this episode. My God.
Amen. And I think one thing that this show does really well is, yes, this is a show about superheroes and people with superhuman abilities, but those moments where they can mix in that humanity is when I think the show cooks at its finest, and it was cooking at its finest at that moment. So we're going to backtrack slightly into the Jean and Scott breakdown. We see Scott sitting on a bed with... Did you think he was talking to Jean in that moment?
I did.
I was like, hairs down, it's Madeline.
I should have known because I made a big deal about... Steve, did you notice in the credits that her hair was down but now it's up? Yeah, I think that's the visual cue.
You rubbed off on me. Every time I see Jean's hair down, I'm like, I don't know if that's Jean. I don't know. I'm waiting for the ponytail. So he's having a conversation with someone who we find out later is Madeline, that he's communicating with telepathically. And he's talking about being overwhelmed and sad and missing Nathan. And Madeline asks him to describe his son, and which is, I guess, the way that they wanted us to be thrown off of the set that was Madeline and not Jean. Because why would the mother of the child ask the father to tell her what her son looked like? Mm-hmm. But it's a healing thing, and they say something along the lines of, "It feels like us," and they share a kiss, and all of a sudden Jean is there being like, "What in the motherfuck is going on right here?" in so many words, and she kicks Madeline out, and Scott is having about a month-long telepathic affair with Madeline Pryor. This is a comics reference, as you wrote as a Riddler trophy, that in New X-Men, Jean walks on Scott having a psychic affair with Emma Frost. Emma's little kind of knowing smirk when Madeline pops out of the mind drift is a little nod to that. I thought,
yeah,
that was
Emma knows
detail.
What's up. She's like, y'all freaks. Yeah. She's like, I like it.
Yeah,
she's like, I'm gonna do that.
Y'all getting that mind
I'm
dirty.
gonna do that to Scott next season. She's like, wait till season 2, bitches. It's gonna be me and Scott. This is where the seed gets planted. But yeah, I have some thoughts about.
Here comes the fanfic.
Here comes the fanfic. Baby, the fanfic's already out there. Fanfics are out there.
Yeah, there's no shortage of content.
Yeah. Okay, I'm of two minds about this. I think that it's fucked up that Scott isn't trying to tell Jean any of these things. And if I were Jean, I would be righteously pissed because it's an emotional affair. That's what this is a metaphor for. And actually, let's double click on this because I think that this is an interesting thing to talk about. Like, in your mind, which one do you think is worse? An emotional affair or a physical affair?
Fuck.
Precisely. The latter one is that.
I was going to say, can you have the physical without the emotional?
Some people can. Some people are really good at.
If it's a...
And this is different. This is different. And I like that we get this scene in this argument, and it's much different than the argument with Rogue and Gambit. The argument with Rogue and Gambit, there's so much love and tenderness and wanting to take care of each other. The Rogue and Gambit scene, that was a hard conversation, but the Cyclops and Jean conversation, that was a fight. That was a fight because I think they have such an agreement between them, and Gambit and Rogue have been very delicate and very understanding about figuring out how to move together. I think that Rogue and Gambit have a lot better communication because of them not being able to be physical with each other. I think that their relationship is inherently queer in a way to where they have to make their own rules and decide what works for them and what doesn't work for them. Whereas Cyclops and Jean, rightly. And if I were in Cyclops and Jean's position, I would be confused too, because Jean has an idea of how things are supposed to go, and Cyclops doesn't know how to pivot from how things have been going. So I think that they are getting in their own ways about what's acceptable and what they want and what they don't want. Because if Cyclops is technically married to Madeline Pryor, he ain't doing nothing wrong. Is it an affair? Or is he talking to his wife?
Well,
you know?
Those waters are pretty muddy. And he does say, the only thing I do know is that's the mother of my child. That's literally
100%. 100%. I think Scott's confused. I don't think he did anything
quite
wrong per se. I think the biggest fuck up I think Cyclops is making is that he's not trying to talk to Jean about any of this. Like, he's not even making an effort. I think that's what's really brutal about it.
And it is, unfortunately, in both directions a little bit, if you want to point it in that direction. I think the biggest, because these are two conversations about relationships that happen. And I think in Gambit and Rogue's case, these are two people who are trying to do everything they can to not hurt each other. Where in Cyclops and Jean's case, they're doing everything they can to not get hurt themselves any more than they already have.
Which, understandable. Cyclops is grieving the loss of his son, who we'll see later.
Makes it a lot harder to work together.
It makes it a lot harder. I think Scott doesn't know how to be more participatory in his grieving process. He's doing that straight dude who hasn't been to therapy thing of, this is my grief, this is my pain, it's mine, you can't look at it, you know.
I was literally about to be like, been there.
Oh my god, yeah. He just, oh man, I'm glad that you can speak on it, but
fucking drag me, dog.
I didn't mean to, baby. You outed yourself.
Okay. It's okay.
But
I did. That's right.
But yeah, dude, I think that Scott's getting in his own way, and I think that what he said to Jean was also pretty harsh. Like, oh yeah, do you love me, or am I just a memory? It's like, dude.
That is someone who, because I've been here too, that's someone who knows they've been caught doing something wrong and is doing anything they can to get the attention off of them. So no matter how true it is, it's a don't look at the bad thing that I did ploy. It's nothing more than that. It's just not the right time to deploy something like that. But the conversation ends with Jean getting hit by what I'm describing as a psychic beam.
Correct.
Because it causes
I think it is.
Struck by a psychic bullet, maybe. Not really. But it hits her square in the forehead. She doubles over. Scott's like, what's wrong? And we go to the big event. We cut to the fireworks in the sky. We get the Watcher in the background. We see all of the mutants gathering for this big ball event. We see Archangel. That was my favorite mutant.
I find it odd that he didn't talk, because he's a founding member of the X-Men. He should have...
I find it odd we don't see him again after this scene.
I find it odd that he just... Yeah, that cameo should have been a bigger deal.
There's a lot of mutant cameos that we don't know what happened to them. That hopefully we will find out. That like are seemingly like big... Like we don't know what happened to Exodus.
He could survive.
But we'll get there. Jumping ahead of ourselves. What's the name of the UN lady? The one that is there, the representative?
I forget, but I'll make a confession.
I don't even care enough to look it up.
You know what I've been calling her in my head this entire time? Mystique.
What's that?
I have been thinking that is Mystique.
Shut the fuck up. You think that's Mystique?
No, now I don't. Because when everything's happening, she doesn't get targeted.
The Sentinels would have
clocked her. But this entire time, I thought that was her. Which, again, would have been fucking cool. I would have been here for it.
It would have been.
And I think when she reacted to Emma saying, oh yeah, Magneto decided to come on as the leader of Genosha on one condition, Rogue had to decide to go with him. And I think, given that Mystique is the evil stepmom, or the evil mom that trained Rogue in her powers in a flashback, her reaction was a little bit loaded, like, oh, what did she say? That would have been a cool reveal.
I liked you shooting that shot,
yeah, though. I like that we have human characters in the show to balance out the bigots. Like, we have people who are all about mutants in this show. We have Tilby. We have this woman whose name we forgot.
UN lady.
Not Mystique. Call her not Mystique.
Not Mystique.
It's not Jennifer Lawrence. Not J-Law.
Got it. And Moira McTaggart on the council.
Oh, I love Moira. Moira's so cool. I'm going to be pissed if they kill her.
And one of the best lines that I've heard in a long time, UN lady, pissed that they're like, didn't realize, most nations don't elect a terrorist to be their leader. And then Magneto, without missing a fucking beat, goes, most nations allow their leaders to be goddamn terrorists. So, and I oop. So anyway, social commentary from the X-Men. What's new? We get the big entrance from Rogue. She is gloveless. She's wearing a sleeveless dress. She's looking free as fuck. Her and Magneto start dancing together. They touch hands. Gambit leaves, obviously. And Madeline looks at him all sad, kind of understanding what's happening as two members of different, I guess, triangles.
Oh yeah,
there's a lot of
she's
triangles.
Been there.
So many triangles.
In that moment, I kind of wanted them to hook up. I was like, oh, this is.
Well, you just listen. Gambit's hot. You want everyone to hook up.
No,
with Gambit.
no. I don't want everyone to. I want to.
You're proxying for yourself. Yeah, I was just gonna say you're proxying for yourself.
He is mine, but I digress.
Yeah, he fine as fuck. Sidebar: Aaron watched X-Men Origins Wolverine the other day, and I forgot that Taylor Kitsch was in it as Gambit, and boy, did they sell that character so hard in that movie. It makes me so sad. Ugh. God, some of those X-Men movies were just so
I know.
bad.
Could have been Channing Tatum. Channing Tatum was supposed to be Gambit.
Remember that time they sewed Deadpool's fucking mouth shut? Who does that?
Fox.
Anyway.
Fox does that. I'm
Fox
so glad they don't have the
Fucking
rights
Fox.
anymore.
Anyway, thank you, X-Men 97 for saving us. Rolling back into this, I think this Magneto dancing and touching with Rogue moment is so huge because it makes Magneto look really fucking powerful. Everyone there knows who Rogue is, knows what she can do.
Right.
And are like, hold on a second, this guy isn't dying right now? Like, he's not literally getting the life sucked out of him currently? Rogue she makes a very intelligent move here. She both kisses him, which kind of puts the cherry on top of, this is your all-powerful leader, I'm doing the right thing. And then she also has the realization in that moment that some things are deeper than skin. And that Gambit is actually the person who she wants to, be with. And so she does the job for Magneto. She establishes him as the all-powerful leader of the mutants who's going to take over as the Chancellor of Genosha. And she also has made her final decision. It's going to be Rogue and Gambit, or so we think, because the same beam that hit Jean hits Madeline. She hears Cable's voice telling them to
Evacuate.
Turn off the music. Evacuate. And suddenly Cable appears. And a huge green explosion hits in the background. And Cable runs up to Madeline, who knows him because they've interacted with Cable before. And he grabs her and he goes, you got to turn off the music. You got to get everybody out of here. And he turns around and something goes off on his arm and he realizes it's too late. And right before he disappears, Madeline takes a very deep look in Cable's eyes and realizes that it's Nathan, her son, and that he made it. He survived and that he was Cable the whole time. Cable disappears and says, I'm sorry, Mom. And all of a sudden the green explosion hits the party and a huge bomb hits the party. And the X-Men are suddenly being besieged by a Sentinel attack. This is your Red Wedding moment.
I did not see this coming.
Ready.
I did not see this shit coming at all. It was very, like the Vision, it was very Cassandra, like in Greek mythology, knowing what's going to happen. Also, another Riddler trophy. Madeline's a good person to foresee this happening because what she would have been feeling psychically might have been remnants from the vision she had in episode 1, To Me, My X-Men, when she was in, I believe it was Guy Ritchie's mind.
Through
and
Cerebro?
She saw Master Mold. And she thought that she was seeing...
It was the one that they
She
killed.
thought that she was seeing the near future, but she was seeing a more distant future in that vision. I think the X-Men, the first thing they're doing is finding Guy Ritchie and digging deeper into his mind to figure out what's going on. Because they thought that they handled it. But... boy, this Sentinel, and
they did not handle
I'm going to nerd out with you for a second. This Sentinel terrified me. It absolutely terrified me. And for me to feel terrified on behalf of an entire island of superheroes who can do shit that, Steve, you and I would never dream of, is such good writing. And it shows that humans are the biggest evil in this world. Which gives X-Men a lot in common with The Walking Dead because people are scary. But we're attacking Genosha on the first day that it's joining the UN. That is so heinous and so cruel and just so calculating. And the fact that someone online said that the Sentinels ultimately look humanoid in that this master mold Sentinel just looks so inhuman. And I thought that that was a really great observation, because wanting to eradicate any part of humanity is not human. And mutants are human. They're just a different stage of evolution. You know, mutants are people. You know, they are human beings with an extra gene, an extra gene to spare. And this really spoke to a lot of what's going on in the world right now, and like the Holocaust and civil rights. So I thought that this was just, I was so scared for them.
Honestly, when you said that, it made me think of the brain bug from Starship Troopers and sort of how it looked with its very grotesque bug-like body with all of the legs and stuff like that and the 3 rotating heads. It was wildly good design for making something that's scary, and I think they level set us with how dangerous it is right away, because Banshee carrying Marrow is being like, get to the gardens, and they get blown the fuck out of the sky. And my guy, I don't think we're seeing them again. I don't think we're seeing either of them again. I think they're dead. And we're going to play, for the rest of this episode, we're going to play a little game called Are They Dead? Because I think the show did a good job of sometimes telling us when characters were definitely dead, but also potentially leaving the door open for maybe not resurrection, but maybe not so dead.
Also, I love that they went out of their way to say that Nightcrawler was alive, because there would have been riots in the street, my dude, if they killed.
Well, they made him look real
Kurt
dead.
Wagner.
They made him look. I know. I was gonna lose my fucking mind if Kurt was gonna be dead in that moment, because, like I said, my 2 favorite X-Men are Gambit and Nightcrawler. So if I was going to lose Nightcrawler in that moment, I would have been real upset.
Especially.
But they made him look like very grievously injured, but then they're like, okay, he's alive, like we're good. And then like 10 minutes later, he's standing up and he's fine. So I guess Nightcrawler's
going to
be fine. I didn't even put him on the list.
He's going to be fine.
Yeah.
Him and his blue bussy are going to be great till the end of the series. They need to sell more action figures. A lot of fan fiction needs to get written.
Fair.
Let us have this.
Amen. Yeah, do it for Charlie, everybody. So, you know, Kurt pulls Rogue and Magneto out of there before they get blasted. He gets very grievously injured, but he's not dead. We see a bunch of the council members laying out on stretchers. We already said that Banshee's dead, just by the way he gets blasted out of the sky. I just don't think you survived that. And especially because I don't think Banshee has powers like that, other than just being able to fly by the use of his voice. Callisto is the only one out of all of these people I'm going to say is definitely gone, because a popular trope in these cartoons is when the pupils dilate, they did. And we got a very clear shot of Callisto's pupils dilating. So I think she's gone.
Yeah.
We see Sebastian and Madeline bloody and passed out next to each other.
They're still alive.
I would be... Sebastian, I don't give a shit about as much. I would be shocked if this was the end of Madeline Pryor's time.
There's a lot of story. Also, there's a lot of unpacking with there needs to be more Scott, Madeline, Jean content. Keep your minds out of the gutter, not what I meant, but also if that's what you took it as, have at it. But I think I think that there's a lot of story with her to be have, specifically if Mr. Sinister is coming back. Here's why Madeline isn't dead. Madeline needs to go and tell Scott about Cable.
Yeah, I just think there's too much story that they've set up. Because, again, if you want to comp this to Game of Thrones, Reigns of Castamere, even the first season when they kill Ned off, I guess spoilers for Game of Thrones. I don't know how the fuck you wouldn't know this stuff.
Wait, Game of Thrones kills off characters? Moment. People die in Game of Thrones?
Yeah, big, main characters. Ones that you spend a whole season.
What?
So I think maybe at the end of season 1, people who didn't know the story were like, wait, they just killed off Ned Stark. Like, I thought this was going to be the guy the whole time. And maybe it's not a clean comp because Madeline Pryor's like clearly not the guy of the series. We didn't spend the entire first season with her. So I don't know. They've done it before. I feel like there's too much on the table for her to be truly gone. And you wrote Emma on here. I didn't even write her on here. I don't recall seeing her again for the rest of the episode, which is why I think she was gone.
Let's double click on Emma Frost for a second. So what happens in this episode? I think something similar happened in the comic books where Emma saw mass genocide or massacre around her, and it changed her so much that she started working with the X-Men, and she started investing her time in helping mutant youth. And this is a heel turn for Emma Frost.
I think that's
and
Yeah,
It's
I
also
think that's
where
right.
her secondary mutation, I don't know if you've ever, in X-Men First Class, they show this.
Yeah, the diamond
Yeah,
skin.
she's able to use, I think it's a form of telekinesis. She's able to make her skin diamond hard, and this makes her able to withstand a lot of damage and stuff like that. It would be really cool. I would love it if they had a moment, because I think the next episode is going to be all about Storm and Forge, and I think that, I'm calling it now. I think the end of that episode, she's going to get her powers back, and then she's going to see the news, and she's going to have a look on her face. And that'll be, in an episode 7, she'll be reconnecting with the X-Men. But I don't think she's going to be aware of what's happening, and I would love for, in episode 7, when they're trying to find out who's still alive, they find Emma, and she's, like, in her diamond form. I think that would be cool.
Yeah, like under some rubble or something.
Yeah, because we have a lot of psychics on the show. I want Emma to differentiate herself from just having telepathy. Let her be a bad bitch.
Yeah, well, they've certainly allowed these female characters to have more layers to them in the first half of the season, for sure. So in this little download and getting who's dead, who's not out of the way, Magneto, Rogue, and Gambit go off to save the Morlocks, who are trapped in the sewers and are very likely to be pursued by Sentinels here. We have absolutely unbelievable action here. Rogue and Gambit go off together. Magneto goes to do his thing as well. They're clearly overmatched, despite them kind of like firing on all cylinders. Gambit and him being like, I've never liked roulette. Like, it does kind of feel like they're just kind of rolling the dice and seeing what happens. He is able to save the Morlocks. Gambit breaks through the window, kills the Sentinel that's approaching them.
Big hero moment.
Big hero moment. Amazing backflips. Love Gambit with a bow staff. We get Magneto trying to distract the Wild Sentinel, the head honcho, as everyone else gets away from the garden. He takes a couple licks. He starts having visions of the Holocaust and those memories. And he essentially says, never again. And he whips a whole fucking train at this thing. He literally picks up a train.
This was Daddy AF. That was so cool. That is the most badass shit I've ever seen Magneto do. And the fact that it still wasn't enough.
Still wasn't enough.
It did leave a serious dent in one of the heads, though.
Yes. And essentially just makes the Wild Sentinel angry. He essentially goes Omega, creating a magnetic force field around him and the other Morlocks. And at the same time prevents Rogue and Gambit from trying to save him, as the Wild Sentinel starts blasting him with just as much energy as possible to try and neutralize the threat. Now, I want to talk about something here, because Leech is gripping on to Magneto here, one of the Morlocks, and Leech has gotten more attention than I think a random throwaway character that's going to die in this moment would get. Although, again, if they're being as ruthless as Game of Thrones, maybe he would. And so my theory here is that Magneto and Leech are not dead, even though we get a moment of the energy kind of blasting them into the ground. Because if you're talking about Magneto has such an overwhelming amount of power that he can restrain Gambit and Rogue, he can tick off the Sentinel sensors for when there's an Omega level threat, and he's having somebody sap his powers, theoretically, because Leech's hands are clearly on his bare chest. I think Leech manages to harness and double his powers right there. And yes, it sends them deep into the ground, but I think that they're still alive.
Do you remember in Madeline's vision where she saw rats? I think she was seeing through Magneto's eyes, deep underground in the future.
Like way deep
just
underground.
Seeing rats all around them, deep in Genosha. But I don't know if Leech is able to do that. Leech doesn't amplify powers. He
just absorbs
doesn't
them.
absorb them. He just nullifies them.
Oh, okay. So he was doing all of that through Leech's touch.
I think if Leech, or maybe this version of Leech, is able to control his ability to nullify powers, Leech is pretty much like, you know, the red light, the old school game, red light, green light, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Leech is like the red light, where if you drop him in a room full of mutants, none of them can use their powers. But I think the show would have at least told us that that's what he was able to do. So in this version of the show, maybe he doesn't do that, or he does something different, or he can control it. But I'm confused about that.
Yeah, they spent a lot of time with him. So you can think he's dead. I think he's not. But we'll see.
Okay.
But we'll see. Rogue, rightfully pretty upset, goes scorched earth. I'm going to reference The Last Jedi here, one of the best Star Wars movie. If you disagree, fucking fight me. And that moment where Finn decides that he's going to sacrifice himself and drive the skimmer into the big cannon to destroy it and save the rebels was very akin to Rogue, just tears in her eyes going full send at this thing, trying to destroy it because it killed someone that she loves. Gambit's like, absolutely not. You're not doing that. Knocks her away using an explosive motorcycle right before a beam hits her, which probably would have killed her. And Gambit talking his shit, saying the cards are always in his favor. Looks like he's going to do something cool, and he gets hit by the Wild Sentinel, extends one of its arms, runs him through the rib, thinks that it's neutralized the threat, and he goes, the name's Gambit, mon ami. Remember it. And he lights up the Wild Sentinel, harnessing his ability to charge up anything that he touches with his energy, and he blows the thing to bits. And bells for Gambit. We cut to the mansion where I don't know if you have memories of 9/11 like this.
Yeah,
but
I do. I have very vivid
I just think
memories.
I just think that, and maybe there's other more recent things. I mean, just insert any fucking school shooting that's happened in the good old US of A over the last 20 years. Just that feeling of watching the news as you sit there helpless. And I can't even imagine the extra layer of knowing people there, where you're going like, okay, like who's out, who's not, and the abject terror and helplessness and just the litany of other trauma that comes with that.
My immediate instinct would be to use the psychic link with Madeline immediately to see what's up. I think.
Can he initiate that, though?
Oh, yeah. The way it works in the comics is that it's an open line both ways.
Interesting.
And I think Jean can as well.
Well, maybe that'll be something he tries moving forward. Because we still have to do the whole Fallout. Like, I don't think they're just... I think they're going to have to do, like, salvage and rescue. And, I mean, if they're going to find Emma under rubble or stuff like that, like... I honestly, I agree with you that we're not going to see it again for 2 episodes. I think we're going to... The next episode is Life, Death Part 2. I think it's going to be entirely Forge and the Adversary and Storm the whole time.
Storm getting her powers.
Yeah, and finding out that this happened. And then coming into episode 7, we'll get all the fallout and sort of the what happened, how do we deal with it, where is everybody? Because this one definitely leaves us where is everybody right now, or at least the people that we know are still unaccounted for. And if we know anything about popular media, don't trust they're dead until you see the body.
Don't.
I'm just going to go with that. Don't trust they're dead until you see a body. So, speaking of, that transitions us to the last Are They Dead? We get a close-in on Rogue holding a lifeless Gambit without her gloves, sobbing into his chest saying that she can't feel him. Is he dead? Sobs into microphone.
Oh, he's dead for now.
There's always the time travel, but what if they didn't?
I think I respect them.
What if this is what it is?
I respect them for that.
Yeah. I think that this is the one that maybe needs to, as much as I don't want to say it, I think that this is the one that has to stick. I would actually be, unless they do a time travel thing, but even then, like, I don't know. I feel like this is the one that maybe has to stick.
Because it matters
so
much.
Do something to reverse it. It matters. And I think there's been a lot of theorizing. I went and watched all of the YouTube videos. I've read all the articles. Like, immediately after I finished this episode, I went and tried to catch up on all the discourse, and there has been some time travel discourse, and I actually would be more interested in the fallout and how the world moved forward. And I think that there is going to be some time travel because obviously we have Cable coming back from the future, so maybe there's an apocalypse bent to this, and we didn't even mention the fact
keeps
that
appearing in the credits.
Yeah, in the credits, in the opening credits, we get that scene of Apocalypse fighting with Cable from the animated series.
Yeah,
so
we do. We get that.
There is potentially a connection there. And it was clearly something that Cable was coming back to try and stop. And it's clearly a huge moment because the Watcher was there. I don't know. I think it would feel cheap to me if he came back.
It would. But the show has been doing so many other things well that I would be curious. I don't need it to happen, but I would be curious to see how they would
You can be curious.
play that. But I don't need it. I like that he goes out like a G, and the G stands for Gambit. I like that that's how he went out.
Me too. Well, that's what I got, man. What an episode.
Yeah, it was so good.
I And multiple people text me about this episode because they knew that we're watching it and covering it. So that felt good to have people also freaking out in my DMs and my messages. I don't know. Honestly, it was nice talking about it because I feel like if I had just watched it again and needed to sit with it without being able to talk about it, then I might have just felt like a sad boy Gambit at the beginning of the episode.
I woke up in the morning and I told my boyfriend, I was like, Cody, we get to talk about this episode today. I'm so excited. This is the most excited I've been to come and talk about something so far in the pod because it left that much of an impact on me. But yeah, before we leave, I realized that we skipped a tradition that we started for the first 3 episodes.
Oh, yeah. I keep forgetting about this.
So we need to make up for last week, and we need to do this week as well. We'll start with badass moments. What was the most badass moment last week, and what was the most badass moment this week?
Okay, the most badass moment last week was the Jubilees powering up together to defeat Mojo, in my opinion, and Sunspot coming in and helping. The most badass moment this week was the finale. I mean, it was how Gambit goes out. It's Gambit taking down the Wild Sentinel. In my opinion. Pretty much almost anything Gambit does in the last, third of the episode.
Okay.
I gotta give my flowers to him here.
I think the most badass moment from last week would be Storm smacking the shit out of... I'm kidding.
No, but I mean... smacking the fucking taste out of his mouth.
You fashioned a fool. I think the most badass moment was them paying homage to the X-Men arcade game a la Jubilee. I thought that was so cool. That was the most badass moment. And then seeing her take out Magneto or a version of Magneto by herself, that was really dope. This week,
that was cool.
I think it was Magneto using a train as a whip. That was amazing. That was so epic. I think they're going to try and do that in the movies now. That was so good. Also, yes, and to that, looking back on it, if Magneto and Gambit had more time to just prep in the moment, I think that Magneto, while he was doing that, would have told Gambit to go and charge up the Sentinel to blow it up, and then would have gotten Gambit out of there some way to watch it explode. The fact that they were so caught off guard, they were doing things that worked. A lot of little things that they did worked, but I think the key to the X-Men is throwing them so off guard that they don't have any time to strategize and to think through teamwork, because teamwork is their superpower. Speaking of coming together, last week and this week, so tell me which characters did you want to bang? Because tonight is the night when two become one.
That was the best transition.
There's more coming, baby. There's more coming.
Literally. This is such a hard question for some reason because Motento Life Death, there isn't really a ton of... I mean, I've already said Jubilee and Sunspot, and that's the obvious one because they literally fuck at the end, theoretically. Same idea as if you don't see a body, if you don't see penetration.
Maybe they just held hands.
Maybe they just held faces. I don't know. What's yours? Because I'm having trouble coming up with one for this first one.
So mine is Stormin flying. Storm and her relationship with flying.
Storm and flying
was my favorite. That's what I want. I want those two to come together, literally, because I want my girl to get her powers back. So I'm going to say Storm and her powers is what I want it to get together. In the first episode, I wanted that so bad for her and also for me. This episode, I would say I'm going to validate you and I'm going to validate the show, Jean and Logan. But not for the reasons that you would think. I'm not super horny for them to get together. I'm there for them building a deeper connection and understanding of each other because I think Logan is a great person for Jean to just learn from right now. And I think if it goes the way of the comic books, you know that at one point, Jean, Logan, and Cyclops were a throuple, right?
Oh, yeah. You've talked about this before.
So, maybe let that happen.
Maybe we'll get there. Well, for the first episode, I'm just gonna do a joke one and say Mojo and the adversary should get together. That's just.
I thought you were gonna say Mojo and ratings.
Mojo and ratings, yeah. Mojo just bangs those ratings like crazy. They literally. They literally fill them up. And for the second episode, I'm going to say Tilby and Beast. Let's get that old flame rekindled.
Oh, absolutely. Blue can blush too, my dear.
That was so smooth. That was very suave. Beast is a suave-ass motherfucker.
Though?
I love
Is
it.
he, though? Because looking back at how he
in
deals,
that, like, nerdy way.
deals with sensitive information, I'm never letting that shit go.
Well,
I'm never letting that
right.
shit go.
She ain't the real one. Hey everybody, this one's
she's
fake.
a clone.
Oh my god. Let's get into those Sentinel ratings, man. What I feel like I know it's coming, but
I feel like
what would you rate out of 5
I feel
Sentinels?
like I'm also gonna blow up your spot. From both of us, it's 5 Sentinels. Obviously, I'm not even gonna let you speak on your behalf because I already know.
Well, Charlie, I'm gonna. What is that? What's that line? I hold my time. What is that? What is the line?
Reclaiming my
amazing
time.
Congresswoman said?
Reclaiming.
I'm reclaiming my
Okay.
time because Charlie. Remember how at the beginning of this?
Are you
I
about
was
to
like,
add
this is
more
so good,
Sentinels?
we may have to take. I'm giving this a 6 out of motherfucking 5. This was the best episode of television I have watched since the 3rd episode of The Last of Us, that beautiful episode between Bill and his husband.
Frank,
yes, Bill and Frank, thank you. Which was also the best episode of television I've watched in like the last fucking 10 years. So like, I am obsessed with this episode of television. I want to go back and watch it a million times to see other things that I missed, but at the same time, I never want to watch it again because it absolutely rips my heart out of my chest. It had real stakes. It had real emotions. It had real drama. It had amazing writing, and it had some of the best action I've ever seen in an animated superhero content. Some of the best action I've seen in superhero content, period. Full stop. I'm so excited for the rest of how this season is going. So I'm sorry to make your graphical job harder, but I am bestowing this episode with the first ever 6 out of 5.
That sounds wonderful, and I don't mind doing those graphics at all.
That's going to do it for this episode of Charlie and Steve Watch Stuff. We just finished covering episode 5 of X-Men 97. You better remember it. And we'll be back next week with our takes on episode 6 of X-Men 97. We're getting our conclusion to Life Death, titled Life Death Part 2. Hopefully Storm can get her ride on with that wind, if you know what I'm saying. And we'll see y'all next time. For myself, Steve Selnick, and my good friend Charlie Peppers, we will see you on the next one. Bye, friends.